Charles Fraser. The Secret of Jack-o'-lantern. The Sherlock Holmes Halloween Special. Episode 3. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production. Today, the 31st of October, 1933. Watson, what's wrong with you? I saw, or rather sensed, my friend leaning over me and patting my cheek. Slowly, I returned to the here and now. Can you hear me, Watson? Holmes tried again. I nodded, and a faint yes passed my lips. Thank heavens, you gave me quite a fright, old chap. Here. Holmes handed me a glass of water. Drink this, it will do you good. With still trembling hands, I reached for the glass and spilt a little. I took a small sip, then another. I'm feeling better now, Holmes. Thank you, I said, still sounding shaken. Now tell me what happened. I was beginning to worry, you know. You were lying here with your eyes open, staring at the ceiling and not noticing me at all. You appeared completely apathetic. I believe I was. I paused briefly and sat up. Then I took another large sip from the glass of water. Holmes, this is all so unreal. I don't even know where to begin, or whether I should tell you at all, I said uncertainly. Nonsense. I promise not to laugh, said Holmes, raising his right hand in an oath. What makes you think the story is amusing? I protested indignantly. You're already able to get worked up. You're feeling better. Now, don't make a drama of it. Just tell me. Straight from the shoulder, Holmes urged me. I took a deep breath and began to tell Holmes. I had a nightmare, but one of the truly dreadful sort, and I swear to you, everything felt so real. I can still precisely recall the fear that I felt, and believe me, never in my life had I experienced such unbridled, pure, raw terror. You had a dream, said Holmes, rolling his eyes. You will listen to my bloody story until the end, Holmes. I won't let you dismiss me as some crackpot. I flared up. Might I recommend keeping a diary for that purpose? Yet I ignored Holmes's rudimentary comment and continued. I awoke because suddenly someone was cutting off my air and I could not breathe. Then I saw glowing red eyes and a distorted face that smiled at me. The figure told me that it would become my new best friend if I killed the people on the note it gave me. In return, I would get my Mary back. Should I fail to do this, I would die myself. The mere thought made me shudder once again, and I began trembling anew. What book were you reading last night? Asked Holmes. None, I said, irritated. Then I suppose our current case is taking quite a toll on you, Holmes deduced. No, that's not it. Holmes, the devil himself appeared to me in my dream, and I'm not entirely certain whether this was truly just fiction. Come now, Watson, it was merely a dream, nothing more. You do not understand, I said disappointedly, propping myself up with both hands and attempting to climb out of bed when I suddenly felt something. I reached for it and held the note from my dream in one hand. Horrified, I stared at it. What is that? Holmes inquired curiously, but I could not answer his question. Instead, I read the names on the note once again. Anne, Joseph, Blake, Nancy, and a question mark. Come now, hand it over, said Holmes impatiently and snatched the note from my hand. What are these names? Where did you get this note? This is the note from my supposed dream, I stammered. Impossible, countered Holmes, yet he could not tear his gaze from the piece of paper. This is not your handwriting, he observed after a brief moment of examination. I did not write the note, I said, rather snappishly. So, you mean to tell me that you received the note from the devil himself, and furthermore, he commissioned you with the murders of 3 more people. Do I understand that correctly? Holmes asked sceptically. In general, you have summarized that correctly, I replied. Holmes sat down next to me on the bed, still clutching the note firmly in his hand. Very well, Watson. I believe you. However, I haven't the faintest idea how we shall explain this to Inspector Wolfford. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but smile. The next victim on the list is called Blake, I said. Do you have a surname for me? Asked Holmes. No, unfortunately not. The devil said I would choose the right one. Ah, the devil speaks with ease, said Holmes mockingly. And you have no further clues? No, I do not, but I should set off early this morning and get it done. Then come along, Watson. Let us see where it takes you, Holmes suggested casually. Back then, 23 years later. Jack, if you truly wish to marry this girl, you ought to reconsider your way of life a bit, scolded the local vicar. Parson, I'm not here to be lectured, but to arrange the banns. So when are you free? Would next Saturday suit? Jack asked impatiently. The vicar smiled mildly. First of all, my son, I would like to hear your confession and absolve you of your sins. Jack held his stomach with laughter. Then he burst out. First of all, I'm not your son. Secondly, there's nothing to confess. My conscience is spotless. Jack burst out laughing again. Very well, said the vicar indifferently. Then I shall also refuse to marry you to this innocent young lady. Jack slammed his fist on the church pew. You will not. Do not cross me, old man. The vicar smiled mildly down at the hot-headed youth once again. What are you afraid of, Jack? Unburden your soul, let God guide and lead you, accept him, and I promise you he will show you the right path. I know that one, but I'm not afraid of anything or anyone. Very well, old man, then listen carefully. I steal, lie and cheat, I drink and whore, and I do all these things with passion. Is that what you wanted to hear? Yes, Jack, you have confessed to me the contents of your life, so you know perfectly well that it is fundamentally wrong. You are clever, but wouldn't it be more sensible to use your intelligence for other things? Jack dismissed this remark with a single wave of his hand. And if you try to drink less, I hardly think your future wife will appreciate a perpetually drunken husband. That's none of your business, vicar. Right, I've poured my heart out to you. Now it's your turn to keep your part of the bargain. Wedding, next Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. See you then. Jack, one more thing, the vicar called after him. Life isn't always easy, and one often makes the wrong decisions. If you need help or wish to unburden your heart, you know where to find me. Today, the 31st of October 1933. We walked along Baker Street, turned into the next side street, and then back onto the main road. I simply let my feelings guide me, and Holmes willingly followed. His look told me that he still did not seem entirely convinced of the matter. But what else could he do? Suddenly I stood in front of our church. Holmes laughed sarcastically. Watson, surely you don't wish to request Christian assistance? Slightly confused, I replied. Perhaps that wouldn't be such a bad idea. Who, other than God, could possibly defeat the devil? Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, Holmes fired back like a shot. Careful, my friend, that borders on blasphemy, I scolded him. But all at once, Holmes's expression turned serious. What's the matter, Holmes? I asked worriedly. Our vicar, his name is Blake Bancroft. Come quickly, Watson. We hurried into the church. Holmes suddenly stopped abruptly. You haven't by any chance brought your old army revolver? Or perhaps a knife? Anything you could use as a weapon? I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an object. Holmes's breath caught for a brief moment. Don't worry, it's only my pillbox. Holmes rolled his eyes. Now, come along, Watson. A whiff of incense still lingered in the air, but inside the church there was no one to be found. The morning service has already ended, I observed. Father Bancroft. Holmes called loudly through the church. "Are you still here somewhere?" "I believe Father Bancroft has already gone home. Perhaps we should look there?" I suggested. But Holmes shook his head. "No, Watson, I don't think so. Look, the large candle is still burning at the altar. He must be somewhere here." I hurried to the confessional and hesitantly opened the door, filled with dread at what might await me. But the confessional was empty. "Look up there, at the ceiling. There's a faint glimmer of light. Quick, Watson, come with me up to the gallery." I hastily followed Holmes up the steps and could already make out a shadow at the top of the landing. The shadow looked like a grinning grimace, and I knew at once. We had arrived too late. Father Blake Bancroft lay flat on the ground, stretched out like the victims before him. 3 glowing pumpkins surrounded him. However, it was not the familiar knife that was lodged in his chest, but rather his large crucifix protruding from his ribcage. Instead, he held the familiar knife in his folded hands. "He was murdered with the knife. Look, the blade is covered in blood. Our murderer then simply swapped the knife for the cross. Our devil appears to have a sense of humour," Holmes commented dryly. "Yes, quite the amusing fellow," I agreed. At the same time, I looked around in all directions. I had not fulfilled the devil's task, and now hoped I would not suddenly receive my comeuppance. "Are you nervous?" Holmes asked me. "No, all is well. Why should I be? After all, we are in a house of God. However, the priest lies dead before us, stabbed with his cross in his chest. The devil himself wanted me to kill him and threatened me with death if I disobeyed. As you can see, there's no reason to be nervous. The devil probably has a few more employees, and one of them is particularly conscientious." Whilst Holmes thoroughly examined the crime scene, I pressed myself against the wall and planned the direct escape route, just in case. "Nothing," said Holmes bitterly. "Not a single trace. Our devil probably employs his own cleaning crew to destroy evidence alongside his henchmen. Come, Watson, let us inform Inspector Wolfford about victim number 3. I looked once more at the dead man. "Rest in peace, Father Blake Bancroft." We had returned straight from Scotland Yard to Baker Street when Holmes was already about to leave again. "Where are you going now?" I asked him. "To the library, of course," Holmes replied. "Ah, and what do you expect to find there? The latest guidebook titled Tips and Tricks for Devil Hunting?" "Watson, you are always so negative," Holmes sighed. "But perhaps a small exorcism would do you some good." "Well, I'm afraid it's already too late for that. Father Bancroft, God rest his soul, will hardly be able to perform one anymore." "That is unfortunately true, but perhaps I might even find a small guidebook titled Exorcism Made Easy, 10 Simple Steps to Devil Banishment for Everyone." Holmes winked at me. "Take good care of yourself, old friend. Eddie will be with you straight away and keep an eye on you." Before I could deny that this was not necessary, Holmes had already gone out the door, and to be honest, I was deeply grateful to Holmes and Eddie for that. 23 years later. Dejected, Jack sat in the front pew of the church. Blasted woman! Why hadn't she come? He had specifically worn his good trousers today and washed his neck and ears, now that Vicar was standing next to him again, placing his hand on his shoulder. "God's ways are unfathomable," the man said to him. But Jack deliberately ignored it. He would never admit it, yet he was truly hurt. He had liked Myra very much. She was the only one with whom he could imagine the "till death do us part." He took out the hip flask from his jacket pocket again and took a deep swig. He felt the liquid burn pleasantly down his throat. He loved that feeling, and he decided that from today onwards, he would love that feeling once and for all more than women, or even Myra. He raised the hip flask to his lips for a second sip, but the vicar held him back. "Don't you think that might be the root of all evil?" Jack laughed bitterly. This is the only thing that always stands by me and is always there for me. This is my best friend. You are responsible for your own friends. Perhaps you should seek better friends, my son. Never forget, God and I are always here for you. Even though Jack did not take the advice given to him by the father seriously, he still felt accepted in his presence. In a certain way, he liked him. Thus, he was one of the 4 few people whom he allowed to share in this feeling. Today, the 31st of October, 1933. It was already late in the evening when Holmes finally returned. However, he did not remove his coat but said to me, "Would you fancy joining me on a little excursion?" "At this hour? Have you even looked at the time?" I protested. "Precisely. Put on something warm and come along. Alice is already waiting in the car," Holmes insisted. "Alice is driving? Then this won't be a pleasant outing but my direct route to meet my new friend in hell," I thundered. "Where are we even going?" "That, my friend, is a surprise, but I think you will like it." So I did as I was told and followed Holmes to the car. We drove outside of London. The area became increasingly rural, and I slowly began to wonder what we were doing here. Finally, Alice stopped and turned off the engine. Nothing but meadows, woods, hills and shrubs. "We're here," she said enthusiastically and got out of the vehicle. Holmes and I followed suit. "And what are we doing here? Stealing firewood, or do we have a corpse to bury? Nobody would find it out here," I said grumpily. "I wouldn't be so sure about that," Alice replied. She walked along the narrow path, lighting our way. As time went on, the path became increasingly difficult to traverse, and I struggled to make progress on the ever-steepening terrain. "Be careful, Dr. Watson. If you fall and break something up here, we'll actually have to bury you here." These prospects did not improve my increasingly gloomy mood. Panting and sweating, I followed Alice and Holmes. "Come along, Watson. We're going on a little excursion," I grumbled to myself. And like a fool, I actually came along. "We've made it! We're here!" Alice suddenly exclaimed. I couldn't see anything yet, but when I went over the small hilltop, I saw it, a blazing fire with women dancing around it. "What are they doing there?" I asked, simultaneously astonished and impressed. "My friend Iris is one of the dancers. The women are celebrating Samhain. Tonight is the night when the gates to the other world are wide open," explained Alice. "Come along. We can sit a bit apart and watch the spectacle. They must have only just begun." Alice, Holmes and I sat down on the blanket Alice had brought beneath a shrub. Suddenly, one of the women began to sing. Then the other women joined in. It was magnificent singing, somewhere between hope, supplication, gratitude, and lamentation. The fire blazed ever higher, and the dancers, too, began to move more ecstatically. Then the singing ended, and a drum began to sound. The dancers moved in rhythm. The women's hair and garments billowed in the firelight, and I was simply spellbound by the spectacle. "Thank you, Alice, for bringing us here," I whispered, leaning towards her. "It is quite impressive, isn't it? The ancient customs that so many have already forgotten or dismiss as nonsense. Death alone creates new life. The fire protects against negative energies and brings light and warmth into the cold season," Alice explained. However, I barely registered the last sentence. I felt dizzy, my muscles suddenly tensed, and I heard a rushing sound in my head. An alluring voice began to whisper softly. I suddenly felt as if in a trance. Then I stood up and walked towards the fire. I heard Holmes and Alice calling after me, but it triggered no reaction within me. The women were still dancing to the rhythm of the drum and their singing, and at first they did not even notice me as I ran directly towards them, but one of them drew me in magnetically. A woman with flowing blonde hair and a billowing white dress had apparently caught my attention as I headed straight for her. She only noticed me when I was a small distance away from her. She stopped in astonishment and looked at me with her large blue eyes in amazement. I made a leap, and I was myself surprised that my arthritis-plagued body was still capable of it, and I jumped at her with full force and knocked her to the ground. I immediately placed my hands around her throat and squeezed. Her terror-filled eyes burned into mine. I felt the pulsing of her carotid artery beneath my hands, registered how I was cutting off her air. She thrashed about and tried to defend herself, but I suddenly had incredible strength. I felt her running out of air, and she was in the process of slowly but surely dying. But I could not stop. I wanted to, but I could not release my hands from her throat. With a forceful blow to my head using a fallen branch, Alice broke the spell, and I released my grip on the poor woman. My head throbbed, and for a brief moment my world began to spin. What remained was a painful pounding in my skull. I looked down remorsefully and incredulously at the woman, who still lay on the ground staring at me in horror. I am truly, deeply sorry, I stammered. I honestly have no idea what came over me. Please, Words failed me. I felt shame and anger towards myself. How could I possibly do such a thing? Why? Holmes and Alice knelt beside the woman and inquired after her well-being. However, apart from a pressure mark on her neck and quite a fright, she appeared to have suffered no further harm. I must apologise for my friend. He has never done anything like this before. He is a doctor who has spent his entire life doing good, but since his mind has become unclear, he occasionally experiences these lapses. I shall send him back for treatment first thing tomorrow, Holmes told the woman. At first, I wasn't quite sure whether Holmes was merely serving the woman a flimsy story to somewhat excuse my behaviour, or whether he genuinely believed that I was no longer quite right in the head. Madam, might I inquire as to your name and address? Holmes trilled. Simply so that I may check on your well-being tomorrow and convey a small token of our regret. My name is Nancy Culligan, and I live at 57 East Street, the woman replied in a distressed manner. Nancy! For heaven's sake, your name is Nancy? I cried out, shaken. Holmes and Alice looked at me in astonishment. What is so peculiar about that name? Holmes asked, uncomprehendingly. The list, Holmes. Nancy is the fourth name on it, I answered, with growing hysteria in my voice. Holmes turned deathly pale at once. You were listening to Charles Fraser. The Secret of Jack-o'-lantern. The Sherlock Holmes Halloween Special. Episode 3. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production